Hello, and welcome to our Wednesday webinar on teaching IETs online with intention, support, structure, and engagement. My name is Vanessa Alvarez, and I'm an instructional resource with Collier Adult Workforce Education.
And my name is Ariel Pachokas, Director of Collier County Public Schools Adult Workforce Education.
So
And whether
whether you
you
oh,
take it away, Vanessa.
sorry, Ariel, whether you have experience with IETs or teaching online, we hope that today's webinar will help you create or refine your online IET program. So while we're doing some of these introductory slides, it'd be great if it's just more than me and Ariel talking back and forth, and we can hear from some of you and make this webinar as interactive as possible. So if you're able and you feel comfortable, please put your name, role, and where you're connecting from in the chat. So again, my name is Vanessa Alvarez, and I'm an instructional resource for Collier Adult Workforce Education. I work a lot with our IET and online programs, putting them together today, from teaching to instructional design. So I'm a trainer for IPDA as well, facilitated some of our IET site visits, and also serve on our state IET advisory committee.
And I also have served on the our Florida IET Advisory Committee, which I've now passed on to Vanessa, who brings a wealth of field knowledge. And in the meantime, I now have been supporting and working with the new IET coaching sessions led through IPDA with guidance and support from Kathy O'Neill with our Department of Education here in Florida. We've
So
also included our emails so that if you want to know more about anything you see today or want to know about your own our own experiences, and you are more than welcome to email us. And so you'll have that in the chat as well.
So hi to Hannah, Jennifer, and Carrie, who have already put their names in the chat. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. All right. So just as a reminder, all attendees' microphones are muted. They're in listen-only mode. We know that there will be questions and comments along the way, so please don't hesitate to ask questions in the Q&A section or the chat as we go. Q&A is a great place to keep your questions private. However, it would also be great if you feel comfortable using the chat to make it, again, as interactive as possible. The chat will be public, so everyone else in the webinar will see your questions or comments. And if Ariel or I don't know the answer to the question, but you do, please feel free to jump in or add to what we are saying. And we would love to hear from some of your experiences and insights. And finally, today's presentation is being recorded and will be available on the IPDA website within 48 hours for you to reference in the future. Thank you all for putting your names in the chat. Welcome.
And I see a couple of friends from Montana and from GED. Thank you so much for joining us.
Awesome, welcome. So today, this is going to be our agenda. We're going to focus on 4 main areas that help us teach IETs online with intention. First, we're going to look at the key components of an IET online. And then we're going to talk about student support strategies, and then how to structure an online IET class so that students always know what to do, where to go, how to keep progressing. And then finally, we're going to explore purposeful engagement. So just like in this webinar, how can we help keep students active, mastering the content and skills, keeping the program meaningful to students? And hopefully by the end of the session, you should have some practical, ready-to-use ideas that will strengthen any online IET course. I'll hand it over to Ariel.
Sure. So before we dive too deep, I always like to kind of start with a big question, probably the elephant in the room. Why would I like to and really set the stage? Why would anyone decide to offer online IETs? Why do onlines? We're just learning to do IETs. Now we're going to complicate it by making a virtual, putting things on a virtual platform. And I pause with that little awkward silence. I have to control myself, slow down. And the reason is, well, we along with other providers have started to explore online IET options to solve specific programmatic challenges. Main one, expanding participation for those students with irregular hours or challenging life schedules. for participants in rural areas. I know that's been a big lift for us, without and oftentimes without reliable transportation. So we not only have a rural area, but we have our programs in town. But an hour commute each way for a 3-hour class is sometimes just not realistic, especially if we really want to ensure student success and programmatic success. On a flip side, some of our larger counties or cities, where having individuals get from one side of town to the other may create a hardship because of travel constraints, traffic. Um, Ultimately, the more we can reduce the challenges for our students to navigate, and even for programmatic, in our world, one of our biggest challenges we've been seeing recently is we're trying to expand while at the same time not be duplicating programs. And in doing so, we're also trying to reduce the need to spread ourselves too thin. So with this in mind, hopefully setting the stage a little bit, throwing that elephant in the room, we'll start looking at some of the key components of an online IET. So even when we move an IET program online, the core components don't change. An online IET is still an IET. That means everything we do should stay grounded in the three required pieces. That is, the adult education and literacy component, the math, reading, and language, the workforce preparation, which is the employability or those soft skills we often talk about, and the occupational training component, which is that tech training, the skill, the true skill component that we want the students to walk away with. Even when an IET program moves online, its core components remain the same, which means everything we do must stay grounded in those three required elements. All three components must be present, and just as importantly, they must be integrated and contextualized. We want our students to clearly see the connection between their academic work and the career skill the IET is designed to build upon and to coach them. While at the same time, we need to ensure that the assignments we're using or we're providing are relevant, purposeful, and intentionally aligned with the students' educational needs and the programmatic outcomes. The goal is not to give students, just like in our traditional IETs, it's not to create more work because we know that's not successful, but to meaningfully connect the academic learning to the technical training while maintaining the employment outcomes as the ultimate goal. It's also important in doing this, it's important for us to consider the key quality indicators when designing or delivering an IET. Here we have a couple of those that we thought were probably really critical, especially initially when you're developing, to ensure that the curriculum fully incorporates all the components. Students need opportunities to apply their learning to the real world, and we'll touch upon that later, and workplace situations. Even creating those opportunities online. While creating those opportunities online might be challenging, we want to plan for it. We want to be intentional about it. Instructional technology and digital platforms should not only deliver content, but also meet students' needs, support work readiness, and enhance instruction. Finally, the curriculum should clearly reflect the knowledge and skills students need for employment, with a well-defined end goal. We're good?
Yep.
Okay.
Did you want to go back?
No, we can keep going. When we look at teaching IETs online, there are some clear strengths and also some real challenges we have to plan for. On the strength side, online IETs open the door for students who might not otherwise be able to participate. Students can attend anywhere, which is especially helpful in larger and rural areas, as we mentioned earlier. One instructor can serve a broad region where transportation was a problem, now it's a non-issue. And the digital literacy is naturally built into the experience because students are constantly using technology as part of the class. Another strength is that smaller neighboring counties may leverage resources so as not to duplicate efforts and instead refer students to a neighboring county that offers that IET of interest. Now I know some of you are thinking that by referring students to another program, you'll be losing that student. I would challenge that if we are genuinely working for what is in the best interest of our students, our work is not to retain that student indefinitely, but instead create a pathway for them to advance and gain that meaningful employment. But of course, with the strengths, there are some challenges, and I kind of touched on one, and that's referring students, but we can't ignore the other ones. Students need adequate technology, reliable devices, along with strong internet access. These are just essential elements. For us, in some extreme rural cases or areas, this may mean what we did is we had students travel to a nearby satellite campus, which had this technology infrastructure, the reliable internet access, so they could virtually connect to another program. Some learners come in with limited technology skills, so we need to be mindful of that. So they need to be supported up front, coached up front, prior to entering even that program. And we also have to think carefully about how to handle hands-on or skill-based components when the training is fully online. And we'll be talking about some of those structures and ideas as well. What do these challenges really pose? A need for programs and us to work and think differently than we have before.
And Ariel, I saw a question come in from Hannah. She wants to know about our processes for pre and post testing virtual students. And yes, we can use remote testing. We tend to encourage our students to come in person to one of our sites that's closest to them. But when needed, we can provide remote testing. So when we talk about teaching IETs online, it's important to remember that online instruction can look very different depending on whether it's synchronous or asynchronous. And if you aren't familiar with those terms, synchronous means at the same time. So those are the online classes that are on a schedule with the teachers and students meeting on a platform like Zoom, like we are now, at the same time. Asynchronous means it's not at the same time. So students and teachers are working at their own separate schedules, separately from each other, but they're following a general pace or guidelines. With this synchronous format, this lets us incorporate many of the same strategies we use in an in-person class. Discussion, modeling, demonstrations, immediate feedback. So there is more of a sense of community, which is important for retention and community building. And then on the asynchronous side, this offers a lot more flexibility for adult learners. They may have difficulty with a set schedule due to work or childcare. However, it also requires even more planning. Every activity, explanation, engagement point has to be intentional because you're not there live, so to speak, to guide students in that moment. So it also means you have to do a lot of follow-up to help the students keep on track. For today's session, we're going to focus mainly on synchronous approaches, but many of the strategies we'll discuss can support asynchronous learners as well, especially in programs that use a mix of both. So student support is going to be the next thing we talk about, and it's an important part in any IET, but there might need to be additional supports in an online IET. So I'm going to let Ariel start us off with that.
Perfect. And with any student support, I think the elephant in the room or the big piece that we need to address upfront and early is technology and technology orientation. Digital skills should never be a given. Even when students say they're comfortable with technology, it's important for everyone to assume nothing and to take the time during the first week and even during the program when you introduce new technology components to lead them through a technology orientation, coaching them through all the components that exist within that within the platforms. For example, a quick review of the how to mute and unmute, how to share their cameras, how to turn it off, how to use the chat and the tools that you're going to be using. If you're using an online platform, we want to make sure we walk them through those platforms and those tools. We also we want to make sure we engage them with the use of emojis, raising their hands, while very important, addressing online class etiquette, classroom norms, and building that sense of community that Vanessa just touched on, and we'll dive deeper later on. Taking this time at the beginning removes a lot of the frustrations later for both the students and for us as the instructors. So I'm going to pass it on to Vanessa to take a look at some other examples.
Great. So our district, we use WebEx, and it's a little bit different from Zoom, but it's very similar. So if I were an online teacher, I would first need to show them explicitly how to use the chat. I cannot take for granted that people know how to use the chat. So we know how to find it usually. We know when it's appropriate to use, but many of our students are not. They find it difficult to navigate, or they may not understand when or how best to use the chat. So we're not just teaching them how to use the chat, we're explaining when to use the chat. So if we're in the middle of the teacher presenting information, this would be a good time to use the chat or raise their hand instead of unmuting and speaking. So again, we have to teach it. So we do this with screenshots from our platform, both in the computer or desktop version, as well as the phone version. Now, you might be wondering, why are you teaching them how to use it on the phone? We always tell our IET students that phones are not ideal in an online class because it's hard for them to see and really engage. A laptop or a computer is always best. However, there are going to be times when students may need to use their phones. So we need to make sure that they know how to use that effectively as well. So as you can see at the top, we're showing them what it looks like to find the chat on the desktop version. And then at the bottom, this shows them what the phone app looks like. So we show them this first, and then we make them engage with it. So let's pretend for a moment, we're going to pretend to be online IET students participating in this technology orientation. And I want you to go ahead and find the chat. It should be at the bottom of your screen. It should be a little chat bubble that says chat. And click on that. And then I'd like you to type in one thing that you would like to learn about teaching IETs online today. So go ahead and look at the chat and type in one thing you would like to learn about IETs. And I'm going to be like a teacher and practice my wait time for a moment.
And I see that we've had some questions in the chat already, and Vanessa, you've already been answering, so thank you for doing that. How to teach hands-on skills online, implementation strategies.
And Megan, we are going to be getting to that towards the end. Lisa, I hope we're helping you somewhere along the way with implementation strategies. And we recognize that this is a short amount of time to talk about everything there is with online IETs. Yes, engagement.
And ensuring learning. We'll be touching upon that. And then a great component, and I'll be talking about it also, is calling students out online. So thank you, Jackie and Lisa, for your comments, because that's how we engage them fully.
Perfect. And then testing the students within their certification, designing a virtual lab scenario. Yes.
Lorraine, that's a great question. Testing students within certification. I don't know if we're really diving into that, but since you brought it up, I think a key piece to that is planning for it. For everything we do in a traditional classroom, we plan for. In an online classroom, we plan even more. So we already know when we start an IET class, whether it be QuickBooks or whether it's nursing assistant, we already know when our end date is going to be. And prior to that end date, we've already established our nursing assistant exams or our QuickBooks exams. And so we're working backwards. So if you don't have it planned out, most likely you're going to miss it.
And I know a couple of people were asking about pre and post testing. We tend to encourage our students to come in person for that. We can do remote testing, but that's a little bit burdensome. So we save it for those that absolutely can't come in. And then William, you have a good question as well that I just want to address before we move forward. We do encourage and try to have our students have their cameras on as much as possible, because it's just like being in a classroom where we need to be able to see that you're engaged and that you're following along. So we do encourage that, and that's part of our technology orientation. But if there were a situation where cameras are off, there are ways to make sure your students are still engaged. So much like this webinar where we can't see you and we can't hear you, we can still find ways to make sure that you're engaged. So we're hoping to talk about some of those strategies as well.
And then going back to the pre and post testing, we have a pretty large footprint in our county. And so we have multiple sites. So we encourage our students to select the site location that's most convenient to them. So it's not just one location that they can test at. For real, if you're thinking of doing something on a much larger scale, then it's about how do we share and work collaboratively with other agencies as well. So great
Awesome.
questions. Wow.
So another really important support strategy is differentiation. And what is differentiation? It's supporting your students. So it's support, it's not simplification. So in an online IET, we can build that support into the way we teach without lowering the rigor. So there are different ways we can do this. We can scaffold, which means we're helping students move step by step into more complex tasks. Flexible methods of interaction, so allowing responses through chat, voice, or shared document, gives students multiple ways to participate. We can also include built-in language and literacy support so students aren't stuck before they even begin. And then finally, progress feedback should redirect and not just evaluate. Feedback is a guide that helps students adjust and keep moving forward. You'll notice that a lot of these strategies are the same strategies you do in person. It just may look a little bit different online, but it's still the same support strategy. And all of these pieces work together to support learners while still maintaining the expectations of an IET. So I have a tool that I think is super cool that I am going to show you called Diffit. And I've recently learned about it, and it's a way that can make differentiation basically seamless. So this is Diffit, and later I can put this into the chat for you all. And it looks a little like our favorite AI friends. It has a nice little chat thing in here for us. We also have some ways that we can attach documents. So I'm going to pretend like I am doing something for my Parapro class, and I want to scaffold it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on attach. I'm going to upload a PDF. Let me just grab it real quick. And this one is going to be about, let's see here, I'm just going to grab something for now. We're doing intro to healthcare instead. I lied. So we are going to scaffold this. And notice this is very horrible AI chat usage. I put almost no information in there, but it's already looking at my document and asking me what I want to do with it. So how should we scaffold this for your students? This is an intro to healthcare document, but it's still too advanced. I want it to be a simpler reading level. So I can click on that, click continue. It's going to ask me a few more questions. How will the students use these simplified healthcare materials? I'd like them to do a quick check for understanding. I want to make sure they're following along and they understand what they're reading. Click continue, and it's going to ask me usually one or two more questions. What's the best format for this quick check? Let's do it as an exit ticket. Click continue, and it's going to take just a moment. Oh, let's do one more. It's going to take just a moment to generate basically some graphic organizers for me to help me scaffold something for these intro to healthcare students. And it's thinking. Okay, so as it pops up, so here you go. I didn't have to do anything except for give it the material that I want to teach and tell it what I need help with. And it has now generated basically a little graphic organizer that will help students read the story, Introduction to Healthcare, and they're going to find clues from the text, why they're important to answer some basic questions. It will give you as much as you want. And then you can use the Diffit chat over here on the right-hand side to kind of narrow down or change things or edit things so that you can really make it yours. And then at the top, I can export this as a PDF and I can put it on my Canvas page or send it to my students. I don't have premium, but if you have premium, you can also export it to Google Drive. I think that basic is just fine for me, so that's why I use PDF. But basically, this is a great way to support students who need additional language or reading support, especially in an online environment where it can be more challenging to see the students and whether they're following along or understanding. And really, this can be used for any IET, even in person. So I wanted to make sure that you saw this cool little app that we had here.
Vanessa, I have to say I love this. And while I can really see it being applicable in an in-person class, I can also see it um, working really well in a virtual class where, in that particular case, it was pairing students up where they can go into breakout rooms. You download the PDF into the chat box. They all have access to it, and you identify the roles you want them to have, and then go through and allow them to work through it, and then you can bring them back to the whole class and discuss as a whole group. Really like that idea. So cool.
Thank you. So Erin, you want to talk about retention strategies?
Retention, absolutely. If any of you have heard me before in the past, you know that retention in our world is critical. We think retention is difficult in a in-person setting. Retention becomes even more critical to keep in mind and more strategic in a virtual world where we often don't even see the students on a daily basis. And so ensuring that we can see, connect, engage uh, is done not by accident, but truly intentionally by incorporating key strategies, as I mentioned. And in an so where am I going with this? It starts with setting clear expectations from the very first day. Students need to know what the class looks like, what's expected and required of them, and how to stay on track. What are those components that they need that they're going to be responsible for? We want to set that up ahead of time for them so that they know what they're working towards. We also need to create a welcoming online environment when students feel comfortable, supported, seen. Yes, seen in a virtual world, they're far more likely to stay engaged. Building community is another key piece. Simple routines like check-ins, partner activities, small group discussions help students hold each other accountable, feel connected to a group, to a class, to each other, and also to us. And of course, we have to be proactive. What do I mean by that? Identifying things or troubles before they happen, predicting, following up with students who are falling behind, um, can prevent little things from becoming a bigger problem and losing the student or not allowing that student to truly be successful in the end goals or end results that we're looking for. And we do this by reaching out to students who are missing in action, reminding them that they matter and that we're paying attention. And this is critical early on as we are getting to know our students. We can start by keeping little notes on their why for this program, or notes on information about their families, their goals, where they're from, where they're wanting to go, so that when we reach out to them later, we can start by making that personal connection followed up by, hey, by the way, we missed you in class yesterday. So intentional connections is one of the strongest tools we can use and have for keeping students in programs and ensuring their success and the program's success. So if we keep going, we dive a little deeper in terms of where do we start with building community? And like I said, it's one of the strongest ways to support retention, and it connects directly um, uh, to not just to our students, but to the program, to each other. A simple first step of welcoming by name. We kind of modeled that earlier. And again, I think that I know it makes me feel better when I know someone's looking for me, watching out for me, waiting for me to engage and connect. Those go a long way in helping the learner feel seen. Getting to know you activities help build that activity not only with the teacher, but with other classmates. And it makes participation much easier later on. It's hard to engage individuals or have students work with each other when they don't even know their names. So we need to make that community where they know each other as well. On another note, when we facilitate meaningful partner or group work, it can't be just busy work, but real collaboration. Why does it have to be that? Well, one, we're working with adults who know the difference, but second, we want to also establish those employability skills that are going to be transferable in the real world later on. Another powerful tool is keeping a record of student surveys, results, and actually using that information. I know in adult education with WIOA, we collect tremendous amount of student information that would be really helpful. Usually that goes into a system or it's on a piece of paper that was collected and we lose track of it, but really creating surveys that are relevant to the teacher, to the program, that then become part of a student success plan where we document their goals, their previous education, work experience, what they expect from the class, where they hope to get to. This helps ensure that we are not only showing students we care, but also that students are making progress to their certifications, to those job opportunities and improving their lives overall. Again, the goal of an online IET is the same as a traditional IET, ensuring student success, creating a pathway for continued learning and opportunity, and that leads to credential attainment and opens doors to employment and advancing and advanced training. So as we move, we get into the next piece, which is looking at a sample student success plan. And this plan is, we call it a plan, but really what it is, it's a spreadsheet. You can add you can add the elements from your data management system. You can pull those pieces out. We obviously here we see CASAS test scores. We have math and reading scores, but we also collect other elements from educational levels, and this is from the surveys we issue our students to kind of gain a better picture or clearer picture perhaps. And so we keep it as a running record. In these particular cases, these can be shared spreadsheets through a Google Drive or a Microsoft 365. The thing we like about using these shared spreadsheets is that all the students' information or all the critical information is there at a glance. Stakeholders, we have multiple, could be me, could be the teacher, could be a support staff, can view it and interact with it at the same time without having to worry about saving it, sending it back and forth, or going into a specific drive. It's all in one spot. Many of us have used student management systems. They're great, but oftentimes it's just too much information. This student success plan spreadsheet has everything that I need or a teacher needs at a glance. We put on there what we want, nothing more, nothing less. And it's all on one page. So you can see that we took survey responses from, in this particular case, from some nursing assistant students, and we were able to enter it, and now we have a common picture of the important elements of where the students are, what their backgrounds are, where they're going, short-term goals and long-term goals, and potential challenges that we need to be mindful of. Thank you.
So, and then another important part of an online IET is making sure you've structured the class for maximum success. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to structure that. So clear and consistent structure is one of the most important parts, right? A learning management system like Canvas, Teams, or Google Classroom helps create one central place where students know how to find materials, assignments, and important information. Weekly touch points help students stay connected. So this might be a short announcement, a quick recap of what was covered, or a reminder about upcoming dates or goals. And then having a consistent agenda, classroom routines, help students know what to expect each time they log in. And then communication should include regular student progress updates and feedback. So for example, on Canvas, sometimes when our students are submitting work, it's important that the teachers are able to give them feedback on that work that is submitted. So learners know how they're doing and what they should focus on next. And then finally, students need clear help pathways. So they know who to contact, what to do if they get stuck. And this is whether it's going to be a synchronous online class or an asynchronous class, because they can both use similar things on learning management systems. So this is an example of an IET course in our learning management system, which is Canvas. And this is the student view of a homepage of our ParaPro class. And you can see that there's an area for recent announcements. And so this is the welcome message of the class. It just got started in the spring. And then you can see on the side, there's a little to-do list for students to keep up with. So this is the student view. They're able to see what's coming up, what they need to be thinking about. Of course, the teacher will be reviewing these things in the class meetings, but we can help students keep organized with these tools. And then the learning management system should be organized in such a way that students can quickly learn class routines and pacing. This example that you're seeing is from our business IET Canvas course, and it's set up by each class or week. Each module is organized by the headers of the class meeting days that week. And then under each day, the students can clearly see what will happen. The entire Canvas course in this case is set up much like this, perhaps with some other modules for extra resources or exam preparation. And then as the students get used to this organization method, it helps keep them on track, helps them go back and find information or resources from past lessons. And they often, if they want to retrieve some of their work, it can create kind of a digital or online portfolio for them because it's all here housed in the learning management system. And then this is a ParaPro IET Canvas. This is organized a little bit differently than the one I just showed you. So it's easy to follow for students, even though it's organized differently. In this case, it's organized by major content units. So this is easier to do for IETs that have fewer major content units, or you have to organize it. We found this to work in our ParaPro IET because there's quite a bit of test preparation that we do, but the major units on the roles and responsibilities of being a ParaPro are just a few. So we organized it by 5 major content modules, as well as a module for test preparation and a module for resources. So if we had 20 different content units, this may be a little more difficult system as students may get kind of lost in there trying to find previous lessons, assignments, or resources. But I'm just going to show you very briefly. We use Canvas, so I saw that was a question. I'm going to show you what it looks like on the actual Canvas page. So this is our module 1 on professionalism and collaboration as the professional here. And you might not organize that we have kind of a little acronym set up in each of our modules, and it's called PANDA. It's preview, activate, navigate, demonstrate, articulate. So I once did a Canvas educator course, and this was the method they used. And I found it to not just be catchy, but to help organize instruction and make sure we're covering everything. So each step gives both the instructor and the students a clear sense of where they are in the learning process. Preview introduces the topic, sets the expectation. Activate gets students thinking about what they already know and connecting it. Navigate is where the main instruction exploration happens. Demonstrate allows students to show what they've learned. And then finally, articulate asks students to reflect, explain, or apply their learning. So this structure makes the class predictable, easy to follow, which is especially important in an online environment where students can't just raise their hand all the time and ask what comes next. They can kind of preview. And so you'll notice that once students get used to this pattern, they start to recognize the flow of the lesson. That consistency reduces confusion and helps them focus more on the learning itself.
So these are really just truly best teaching strategies in a online classroom environment, just like we would have in our traditional classroom environment, just being mindful of the student on an online platform, making it predictable and consistent. I love it. Finally, how can we be sure our online students are engaged in purposeful and meaningful activities that support the end goal of the IET? Well, purposeful engagement in an online class means students are interacting frequently, not just listening, and definitely, I go a little rogue here, definitely not just working independently, clicking on a different online platform. For example, we use Essential Ed, Aztec, Burlington English intentionally because we want to make sure we're bringing up our students' math or reading or language skills. But by having them connect to the classroom just to connect into Essential Ed or Burlington and just click in a quiet learning environment while the teacher's there monitoring maybe, that is not what we're talking about. What we really mean is through really chat-based interactions, warm-up prompts, vocabulary checks, or asking students to explain their thinking. Really, it's all about engaging them in true purposeful questions and tasks and activities and in conversations. Sentence frames can be used that help students respond more confidently depending on your levels, especially when they're still developing language and academic skills. Polls and quick checks are a simple strategy. Exit tickets can also be used. Just some of the things that Vanessa mentioned earlier. But ultimately, it all starts by ensuring that the students are exposed to the tools and the resources. We coach them on those tools and resources, and we help them utilize them and engage with each other. Interactive tools can take engagement a step further. Tools like whiteboards, shared documents, and like I mentioned before, breakouts. If you haven't used Mentimeter, I think many of us have. Mentimeter is a great way of connecting individuals virtually into a common platform. And then we have also Padlets and Slidos, depending on the platforms you're using. The goal is to keep interactions frequent and purposeful so students are actively engaged throughout the lesson.
So I am going to try a quick interaction tool. So it's, normally I would love you all to play along with me, but unfortunately we are not going to be able to have you all playing with me. So I'm going to have Ariel be our experimental student in this case. And this is using whiteboards. So most of your platforms, your online platforms will have some sort of whiteboard. So if I were in a class and I were the teacher, I could ask our students to put in one word that describes a good online class or whatever it is I want them to engage with. So the students can reply with sticky notes. You can see that they can reply with little pictures, cartoons, emojis. So this is one way to keep your student engaged, interacting. It's really no different than having chart paper in your in-person class, in your IET class, and having students come up and put things on that chart paper. So your students are able to do the same thing, but with your whiteboard instead. Or maybe there's different tools that you can use in the whiteboard, such as you can put charts in there. You can put mind maps. I can put content that's already created and have students interact with it. There is just so much that you can do with a whiteboard. Thank you for demonstrating. And then
I get excited, sorry. Doesn't take
cut you
much.
off. Oh, it was very interesting. It was very exciting. But another way that we can have our students interact with us in an online setting is to have them give us a thumbs up or use an emoji like the clapping emoji or the heart emoji. So one example is I might ask you all, if you are my students, think of everything that we've talked about so far: student support, class structure, engagement, and which of these things do you think has the biggest impact on student success in an online team? We can kind of do it in the chat if you want to try. So if you think student support is the most important thing, you could put a little thumbs up in the chat. If you thought class structure is the most important thing, you could put a little clapping emoji in the chat. Or if you think engagement's the most important thing, you could put a heart in the chat. Perfect, Sandra. I agree. I think engagement is the most important part of an online. I think we're all in agreement.
Oh, I would challenge. Class can be super engaging, but if you don't have a purposeful structure and student support, things can fall through the cracks.
Anyone
So,
else want to challenge? No differences? So emojis and raising hands. Thank you, William. That works too. Emojis and raising hands, that's something we teach in our technology orientation because it's part of how our students are able to, love it, Sandra. Our
that's
students are able to show us that they are understanding or not understanding. They can tell us to slow down, speed up, got it, move on, all of those things with emojis without everyone having to unmute at the same time and speak up. So it's a great way to keep your students engaged, and you can do a little spot check and keep everyone on their toes. Thank you for participating.
That was very nice. So breakout rooms. Breakout rooms are a great way to facilitate small group work, engage students, give the ch students chance to take ownership of their learning, talk, collaborate, practice skills in a less intimidating setting where it's not 20 individuals, but maybe a small group, 3 to 4. But for breakout rooms to work well, they need to be structured. They need to be coached. They need to be taught of what the goals and expectations are. We want to assign roles. We want to be very clear. And the roles can be roles like the reader, the leader of the group, maybe someone to report back, and the timekeeper. And so that each one knows what their responsibility is and the why behind it. Second, we want to be explicit with the instructions. What is it when they get into that breakout room? What is it that is expected of them as a group, and as their own role to facilitate within the group? Another key piece in that in being explicit, make sure they have a we're going to start and we're going to end an end time, whether it's and we need and don't just throw out a random time of 15 minutes. In an online world, use that clock at the bottom of the screen to say, okay, it's 3:47 now, and at 3:57 we're going to regroup so that everybody can see when they need to come back, and we can hold them accountable to that. Third, keep breakout activities short and meaningful. If you're putting students in a breakout room for 30 minutes, that is a long time. I'll be walking out or stepping away and having a cup of coffee, coming back. That'll put me to sleep. And so we need to keep it task focused, short, sweet, and to the point so that we want to regroup everyone. The role for the instructor is we need to be monitoring those rooms, jumping in between breakout rooms, answering questions, ensuring the conversation is on task, um, um, broadcasting. Um, eh, Broadcasting meaning you can throw a little note or memo or a note or little chat message into all the rooms all at once to kind of let them know that time is coming up, that here's an update on a question you heard in one room, that you want to make sure everybody's receiving the same message across all the rooms. All of these components really lead to making not just a meaningful but productive breakout session. We then really want to apply real world application. So breakout rooms are an entry level for that, where the skills we're teaching them in a breakout room are the skills that should be transferable into the world of work. But along those lines, we also want to be mindful of the application of technical hands-on skills and how do we bring them into an online setting. In our classes like nursing assistant in construction or other technical, we rely heavily on demonstration and practice. So instructors need to be mindful of when we create an online program, are we going to be asking, how are we going to create an opportunity for students to engage in those hands-on skills? Are we going to ask them to articulate the steps that they'll be taking? Are we going to ask them to do a little video recording and uploading that into Canvas of themselves demonstrating a specific skill like hand washing? Or are we going to ask students to come in on occasion into an in-person lab day where they're demonstrating and actually practicing those skills? Those are all pieces that can be done in an online platform, but it has to be planned for. It has to be communicated up front early to students. We do it at orientation when first before even the first day of class. We already have a schedule of when we will be doing certain things. And a perfect example of that is in our nursing assistant. There are lab days that we expect them to. In our manufacturing program that we had, our manufacturing IET, we had a combination. They would come in once a month to demonstrate and do some hands-on components, but we also provided them with a tool bag that they would take home, and in that tool bag, all the students had the same tools and were able to utilize those tools for measurement, accuracy, and what kind of tools did we have there? Things, small tools, inexpensive, calipers, micrometers, rulers that allowed them to use, demonstrate, and gain fluency and accuracy in measurement with tools that they would see in the real world. However, in a place where they can do it just from home and demonstrate it using either a video recording or even just because they're all measuring the same element, let's say a penny, they would all measure the same, a similar penny and upload, respond to a document of the dimensions or the weight or the any other elements that the instructor was really focusing on that day. And we finally get into LMS to capture, and I kind of touched upon this. Our parapros do this in this example here. They record themselves doing an activity where working with small groups. So if they have children at home, they can demonstrate it with their children. But in our manufacturing, like I mentioned, demonstrating it online with our nursing assistant, doing a video of themselves washing their hands or knocking on the door and walking through the steps of what the hand washing process or the foot bathing process that they might have to demonstrate. Then there'll be other scenarios where we ask them to come in specifically because doing more of an assisted carry or changing a bed might be a little bit easier in person.
Awesome. So as we wrap up, just bringing us back to what matters most in an online IET classroom. So first, a clear structure reduces confusion. I know that some people are thinking structure might be one of the most important things because when students know exactly where to go, what to do, what's expected, they're much more likely to stay engaged and persist. Interaction also has to be frequent and meaningful. It's not just about checking a box. It's about giving students regular opportunities to think, respond, and connect. Differentiation should be built into your design from the beginning, not added later. And now you have a really cool tool called Diffit that you can try out later. And then technology should never be assumed. It needs to be explicitly taught. It should always support learning, not distract from it. Retention comes from relationships, community building, clear expectations, consistent follow-up with students. And then finally, even in an online environment, this is still first and foremost an IET. So that means we're always connecting academics, workforce skills, real-world application all together. So if we keep these ideas at the center of our planning, we're setting our students up for success.
And Vanessa, I would add one more piece to all of that, and that is the reason many of us are doing online IETs is because there's a challenge that we're encountering, accessibility or where students the transportation. And I think for us, it's going to be always what is that challenge, and how do we hope to address it and navigate it, and really coming back to us in terms of thinking differently and providing those entry points.
So whether you have an online IET or not right now, or you're just thinking about one, you don't have to know everything today. We couldn't squish everything into an hour. Instead, think about one strategy you would like to implement in an IET class tomorrow. even if it's an in-person class. Many of these strategies can be used effectively in those classes as well. So maybe it's adding a quick interaction, improving the structure of a module on your LMS, maybe trying a tool like Divot if you haven't already gone off into Divot world while we were talking. So small intentional changes have a big impact on student engagement and retention. So if you can walk away with just one strategy you feel confident trying, then this session was a success. So thank you so much for joining us today. Before we go, please wait a moment and be sure to give IPDA your feedback. And while you're completing the survey, I just want to let you know that we do have another upcoming webinar May 5th at 1 p.m. It's going to be a Tech Tuesday entitled Bridging the Digital Divide, Practical Strategies for Adult Education. So if you want more, sounds like this is going to be another great one for you to attend. Please go to the IPDA website to sign up for that webinar if you think it would be helpful for you. Ariel and I thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your engagement. We hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon.